The moment people hear the word radiation, fear kicks in. Images of nuclear bombs, cancer and death immediately flash through the mind. But here's the reality. Radiation isn't some rare man-made danger. It's a natural phenomenon that surrounds us every single second of our lives. At its core, radiation is simply energy moving from one place to another, either as waves or particles. The sunlight traveling from the sun to Earth is radiation. The warmth you feel on your skin is radiation too. So radiation is not just something dangerous, it is also something we rely on every day. To truly understand it, we need to divide it into two types: non-ionizing radiation and ionizing radiation. Everything in the universe, humans, animals, rocks, water, even your blood and your DNA, is made up of atoms. At a microscopic level, that's all there is. Radiation has the ability to knock electrons out of those atoms. Non-ionizing radiation does not have enough energy to break atomic structures in your body. It includes radio waves, TV signals, Wi-Fi, mobile signals, microwaves, and even the visible light you see every day. From the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, you are constantly surrounded by it. At normal levels, it is completely harmless. However, at extremely high power and very close range for long durations, it can generate heat. For example, standing near a powerful microwave source could burn your skin, but everyday exposure from phones or Wi-Fi is not something you need to fear. This type of radiation is not even man-made. It has existed since the Earth was formed. Deep inside the ground, elements like uranium and thorium slowly release radiation. Whether you are indoors or outside, tiny amounts are constantly interacting with your body. Even food contains natural radiation. Bananas, for example, contain potassium-40, a naturally radioactive element. Yes, eating a banana exposes you to radiation, but at extremely low levels that are completely harmless. It is simply part of how the world works. Now, this is where things become serious. Ionizing radiation is high-energy radiation powerful enough to knock electrons out of atoms inside your cells. Once that happens, the atomic structure changes. When atomic structure changes, DNA breaks, and when DNA breaks, cells start to malfunction. DNA is what keeps your entire body in balance. It controls how cells grow, repair, and function. Every process in your body depends on it. When ionizing radiation enters a cell, it disrupts that system. Think of DNA like a ladder, and radiation like an invisible force slicing through it at random. Sometimes it breaks a single strand, sometimes both. The body does have repair systems, and minor damage can be fixed, but repeated exposure or high doses overwhelm those systems, and incorrect repairs can occur. When that happens, cells can begin to grow uncontrollably, which leads to cancer. X-rays, gamma rays, alpha particles, and beta particles are all forms of ionizing radiation. That is why hospitals use X-rays and CT scans only when necessary. The danger of radiation depends on the dose, which is measured in units called sieverts. 1 sievert is extremely high, so in daily life we use millisieverts, where 1 sievert equals 1,000 millisieverts. On average, a human receives about 2 to 3 millisieverts per year from natural sources like air, food, earth, and cosmic rays, and this is completely normal. A chest X-ray gives about 0.1 millisieverts, while a full-body CT scan can give around 5 to 10 millisieverts. As the dose increases, so does the risk. Between 10 to 50 millisieverts over time, cancer risk begins to increase. Above 100 millisieverts, the risk becomes clearly noticeable. Around 500 millisieverts, radiation sickness symptoms begin, including vomiting, extreme fatigue, hair loss, and skin damage. At 1 sievert, the situation becomes serious. At 4 to 6 sieverts, survival drops below 50% without treatment, and at 8 sieverts or more, the human body cannot survive. Even an hour of exposure at such levels can cause these effects. High radiation exposure affects the entire body. Cells that divide rapidly are damaged first. The digestive system collapses, bone marrow stops producing blood cells, immunity fails, and infections and internal bleeding begin. These effects were clearly seen after the Hiroshima atomic bombing and Nagasaki atomic bombing, as well as during the Chernobyl disaster. A common question is whether mobile phones, cell towers, and Wi-Fi cause cancer. They do emit radiation, but it is non-ionizing radiation, which does not have enough energy to break DNA under normal usage. Scientific studies so far have found no strong evidence directly linking mobile usage or cell towers to cancer. Still, it is better to avoid unnecessary long calls, excessive headset use, and using phones while charging. If ionizing radiation is dangerous, one might wonder why it is not eliminated completely. The truth is that modern medicine cannot function without it. Without X-rays, fractures cannot be detected. Without radiation therapy, millions of cancer patients would not survive. The same high-energy radiation that can cause damage is also used to destroy cancer cells. It is used to detect lung infections, sterilize medical equipment, and preserve food safely. Nuclear power plants also use radiation to generate electricity. Radiation is a tool, much like a knife. It can be used to help or to harm. When used correctly, it is incredibly beneficial in daily life. When misused, it can be destructive. The key is not fear, but understanding. Understanding the type of radiation, the dose, and the exposure time. With this clarity, unnecessary panic disappears, and real danger becomes easier to recognize. There are many myths about nuclear radiation. One of the most common beliefs is that living near a nuclear power plant automatically leads to cancer, but this is not true. Under normal operations, nuclear plants release extremely low levels of radiation, far below harmful limits. Workers in these facilities follow strict safety regulations. In fact, coal power plants release more radiation into the atmosphere than nuclear plants. This may sound surprising, but it is true because coal contains small amounts of radioactive elements like uranium and thorium. When large quantities of coal are burned, these elements are released into the air. Nuclear plants, on the other hand, are tightly sealed, making radiation leakage extremely unlikely unless an accident occurs. However, when accidents do happen, the consequences can be severe. That is why safety measures in nuclear facilities are extremely strict. This leads to an important question. If a nuclear explosion is over, why does radiation still remain in that area? To understand this, radiation must be viewed in two stages: initial radiation and fallout radiation. Both are dangerous, but in different ways. Initial radiation occurs immediately after a nuclear explosion, within the first few seconds. It consists of high-energy gamma rays and neutrons that travel at incredible speeds. Radiation levels during this phase can reach 10 to 100 sieverts. People close to the explosion absorb this radiation directly into their bodies. The most dangerous aspect is that there may be no visible injuries on the outside, even though severe internal damage is occurring. DNA inside the body is destroyed rapidly, which is why some survivors die within hours or days, despite appearing physically unharmed. Fallout radiation is the more prolonged and often more dangerous phase. It begins minutes, hours, or even days after the explosion and can last for years. During the explosion, surrounding materials such as soil, sand, buildings, and metal absorb radiation and become radioactive. This contaminated material rises into the atmosphere and later falls back to the ground as radioactive dust, known as fallout. It cannot be seen, smelled, or felt, yet it is extremely dangerous. Fallout radiation spreads through air, water, and soil. It easily enters the human body through breathing, drinking contaminated water, or consuming contaminated food. Unlike initial radiation, fallout works slowly. It damages DNA over time, leading to symptoms such as hair loss, vomiting, diarrhea, and extreme fatigue weeks or months after exposure. The immune system weakens, making even minor infections dangerous. Depending on wind patterns, fallout can spread across vast distances. If initial radiation is a sudden impact, fallout radiation acts like a slow poison. The long-term effects of fallout radiation are severe. Cancer risk increases significantly over time, especially for blood cancer and thyroid cancer. If pregnant women are exposed, it can affect unborn children. After World War II, cancer cases in Japan rose dramatically within a few years of the bombings. Many people faced birth complications, and future generations were also affected. Because of this, affected regions are declared long-term evacuation zones. Places like Chernobyl still remain uninhabitable decades later. The Chernobyl disaster further demonstrated how dangerous nuclear accidents can be. When the reactor exploded, radioactive elements such as uranium, plutonium, and strontium were released. These substances decay very slowly and can remain radioactive for hundreds of years. This is why the area continues to be abandoned even today. Not all radiation behaves the same way. Some radioactive elements have short lifespans and weaken within days or months, while others persist for decades. These long-lasting elements continue emitting radiation silently over time, making them particularly dangerous. This difference explains why Hiroshima recovered faster, while Chernobyl remains unsafe. Nuclear accidents may occur rarely, but their impact lasts across generations. They are not just momentary disasters, they reshape the future for decades or even centuries. Thanks for watching.